everybody. Welcome into Valley Vibes, where we talk all things NBA, culture, and more. I'm Lindsay Smith, and today I'm joined by Casey Jacobsen, former Phoenix Sun and current basketball analyst. Casey, thank you so much for stopping by. How you doing?
Lindsay, it's a pleasure. Always talking hoop or whatever you want. Let's do it.
Well, as you know, the NBA trade deadline has come and gone, and the Phoenix Suns did decide to make a move at the deadline. They acquired Royce, ONeal, and David Rody. So first and foremost, I just want to get your thoughts on that move and what you think of those two guys.
So I'm not as familiar with Royce ONeal, but I have followed David Roddy for a very, very long time. Very familiar with him. I've called probably, I'd say, 4 or 5 of his college games when he played at Colorado State out in Fort Collins. So big fan of his game. I think he only played 3 years at Colorado State for Nico Medved, his head coach. And they play in the Mountain West, which is one of the better basketball conferences on the West Coast. I mean, it's the Pac-12 in the Mountain West, and this year the Mountain West is just as good, if not better, than the Pac-12. So Roddy had some good competition there, and he was one of the most unique college players of his time because of how he's built. Right, he is built like a tight end or a defensive end on the gridiron. He is massive frame, but he really moves well. He is the definition of a mismatched nightmare for any wings out there, just because of his size and strength and his ability. I know I would have had a hard time trying to stay in front of David Roddy, or a shot goes up trying to block that guy out. That's a big no thanks on that. And really nice to see him blossom in the NBA. And absolutely think that most teams could use a player as smart, as big, and as much of a mismatch as David Roddy.
Yeah, and I mean, for the Suns, like, he's 22 years old. So, with the CBA and all the limitations around what they're able to do there, investing in a younger guy like that is a smart move, in my opinion. Do you think that he'll have a long tenure in the NBA?
Yeah, I mean, most of that is up to him, Lindsay, for sure, and his work ethic and his fit. What I learned during my career in the NBA and beyond, there are a lot of really good players all across the United States and all across the globe. And what separates a lot of the players that play a short period of time and guys who stick around in the NBA, there is definitely, we have to be honest, there's a physical component to it. Like, you have to have the physical prerequisites to play a long time in the NBA. You got to be big, strong, tough, mentally and physically. But then there's also another part where you got to find that fit, a team that needs you, a coach that wants you and sees value in you. And I do feel like there's been a lot of players I either played with or against that either stayed for what I thought longer. They played a longer career than they probably should have because they found a nice little niche for a team and a program. And there are other players that I thought were wildly talented that didn't play as long as others because they never found that role and they never gained that confidence and they never were able to take that next step. So with Roddy, that's kind of up to him. With Royce ONeal, that's kind of up to him.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, Casey, you were traded during your time in the NBA. Take us a little bit behind the scenes. What is that like for guys? I'm sure there's a little bit of excitement depending on where you get traded to, but also maybe a lot of stress of just picking up and moving across the country sometimes.
Yeah, how weird is that? The professional sports are so weird, but it's never the weirdest in two things. The draft, which is when a player has no choice but to go to the team that selected him. That's just really bizarre. In no other profession do we don't draft lawyers all across the country and make a move to Chicago or LA or Phoenix. It's just bizarre. And the second thing is being traded. Other professions, they don't just, a company doesn't just say, hey, sorry, but we're shipping you over to Miami. Have a good time. They usually talk to the employee, ask them if they would like that promotion or that demotion, whatever it might be. So it's weird. For me, it was January of 2004. I knew the trade deadline was coming, but I was not in any rumors. My agent did not call me and say, hey, the Suns are looking to make a move. If you go back, we were actually the number one team in the West as far as a record was concerned. I believe we were 32-6 on the season. So it wasn't like the Suns were one of those teams that were terrible or downward spiraling and needed to find some new players and new life. So I thought I was safe, honestly. If I'm speaking frankly, I thought I was safe. So the day happens. I think it was in January 21st, if my memory serves me correctly. We had a game against the San Antonio Spurs, who ended up winning the championship that year, I think. And it was just a regular season game on national TV. We go to the morning shoot around. Nothing's, weird or strange or off in any way. I go home after the shoot around and I leave my phone away. Like I put it down, and I'm hanging out with my wife and my bulldog Harley at my house. And I come back maybe an hour and a half later, around there. But it was about 1:30 or 2 in the afternoon, and I had about 15 missed calls.
Oh, goodness.
And yeah, and Lindsay, I barely know 15 people in my life. So 15 people try and call me, I knew something was up right away. But I didn't automatically know exactly what was up until I checked my first voicemail, and it was from my agent. He said, "You need to call me right away." And then I knew he didn't leave it on my voicemail. He just said, "Hey, you need to call me right away." But I knew right away because the trade deadline, my agent doesn't call me and leave messages like that for me. Okay,
Yeah.
so I call him back. He tells me I've been traded to the New Orleans Hornets, who also were so we were the best record in the West. New Orleans was dead last. They were terrible. I think they were 6-32 at the time of the trade. So I went from the best to the worst. So that was probably a unique experience. I'm sure there's not very many NBA guys that can have a story like that.
Yeah.
Traded from the best to the worst. And he told me who I was traded for. It was me and two other players, Maciek Lampe and Jackson Vroman, my two young teammates. I think they were rookies at the time, for Jim Jackson and another pick, I think, later. And so I was bummed. I was devastated. I told my wife, and she cried. And my bulldog was like, licking her face and licking the tears off her face. And the other phone call I had was with Coach Mike D'Antoni shortly after that. So after I got the news, I talked to Coach D'Antoni. I also got to talk with Brian Colangelo, the general manager, and they tried to soften the blow a little bit, telling me that they love me as a player and that they hope I don't take this personally, like we don't want you. It just I felt like they had to make a move, and this was the best way. But they wished me well and all that stuff. It was nice. I still have relationships with both of those guys. I understand the business, Lindsay. I'm not a dummy. Everyone understands when you're a basketball player that you are a commodity that can be bought, traded, or sold, technically, I guess. But it is personal. There's no other way around it. And then the final phone call was from the general manager of the New Orleans Hornets, who then asked me, "Hey, are you willing to play in a game tomorrow?" I said, "Okay, yeah." He's like, "We'll put you on a flight first thing in the morning, 6:30 a.m. to New Orleans. We have a game tomorrow against whomever." I didn't even remember who it was. And I said, "We'd love to put you on the floor tomorrow." And I said, "Well, I guess so. I'll pack my bags." And so my wife stayed behind for about a week. I lived in a hotel in New Orleans and played the very next night. I played about 25 minutes, and I only knew like 2 plays. So.
If I recall correctly, did you play 84 games that season, right?
You bet.
So you bet. Between the two teams, yeah.
Yeah, and I believe that I tied a record. I'm not the only player, I think, in NBA history that's done that, but I don't think anybody ever has played more than 84 games in one regular season in NBA history. So I guess I get to be on a cool little list. I mean, no one really cares that much about it. And for the record, I did not get paid overtime for those 2 games. So
no.
I did not. Well, I don't know how that works. My wife asked me about it, and I was like, who do I even call for that?
That seems like something that should be built in. If you play extra games, you should get a little extra bump.
That's what I think too, but yeah.
Well, at least your names are in the history books, that's for sure. Okay, so you didn't think you were going to get traded that year, but you've been in locker rooms, obviously, around deadlines and things of that nature. For guys whose names are involved in the rumors around teams, do you feel that as a teammate? Is there a vibe in the locker room as the deadline kind of approaches?
You could say that there's a vibe. There's a little bit of a nervous, anxious vibe. We are human beings, and unless people don't ever go on the internet or check their phones ever, then you're going to hear some of that talk. And also, if you're a team that is supposed to be better than you are, for example, that, why wouldn't your front office be looking to upgrade the roster? That is just what their job technically is. So as a player, you would also understand that. And that's what makes my trade story a little bit more unique, because we were number one. Our record was amazing. But if I played on this Suns team, for example, who's expected to be at the top and have been just a little bit up and down, yeah, I would look around and be like, somebody in here, I don't know, it could be me, it could be you. Somebody's going to be out of here, and we're going to get some new people. I do, when you have new guys, or I was one of the guys that was new in the locker room. It is very much like a professional atmosphere. I was welcomed to the New Orleans Hornets. I've heard of very few stories, if any, of guys being like, that guy's a jerk, I don't ever want to play with him, he's on our team now. No, forget that. Like, that doesn't help anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And, like we talk about being true professionals, most of the guys in the NBA are true professionals. And the ones that aren't, probably aren't for a variety of reasons. One of them might be just youth. They haven't been in the NBA long enough to really feel the business side of it. But the Suns are a roster, I think, that will be able to handle that better than most. But yeah, it is awkward. Lindsay, I'm going to say, like, I went to a locker room and like, hey man, I'm Casey. I'm going to be here tonight for a real life NBA game. Like, we're not just playing rec ball, right?
Yeah.
We're not playing our church league. We're playing real stakes basketball. I just met you. Don't know how you play. You don't know how I play, but let's go out and try to win a basketball game. It's weird.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Do you think that, okay, so last night the Suns played, of course, the day of the trade deadline. I think the NBA should make the deadline like a day without games personally, but we saw the Suns really have a big game last night. It was an enjoyable game to watch. It looked like they were having fun out there. And we all talked about it here at PHNX, how it kind of feels like maybe they're playing a little more freely, like a weight has been lifted off their shoulders now that the deadline has come and gone. Is that something you experienced, or do you also think that that's kind of a thing that teams might play a little bit better once the deadline is over?
Yeah, there might be in the back of your mind, okay, this is our team for the rest of the haul, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's pretty normal. There is, we talked about the little bit of the anxiousness that you feel in a locker room. Am I gone? Is he gone? What is our team going to look like? What does our front office even feel about where we're at right now? Those conversations can be awkward and difficult. But yes, there is a weight lifted. There is also, if you have new guys, if you didn't trade anybody, there's a weight lifted for everybody that's there and says, all right, now we got to finish our season the way that we're supposed to, or make that push. If you do get new guys, it is totally natural and normal to get a jolt of, all right, like, how is this new guy going to help us? And then in practice, Lindsay, also what happens in practice, you get a new guy, you have to bring that new dude up to the level. And that's usually like the young players are going to be spending extra time in practice going over offensive sets, defensive schemes with the coaching staff as well to really help that young man, because it's in everybody's best interest to get that person like on the level. You're not
Yeah, up to speed
you're not going to
fast.
ask your superstars to do that. That's going to happen more in the flow of the coming days and weeks of the season.
Absolutely. Well, Casey, thank you so much for joining us and sharing some insight behind the scenes from a player's perspective. We really appreciate you. Just overall, how are you feeling about the Suns for the rest of the season?
So I love the Suns. I love organizations and teams that take a big swing, that go all in. I've watched maybe 7 or 8 games of the Suns this year, and I would say I like to think of myself as a lucky charm. I've only seen them lose 1 game, so
Hey.
yeah, they're 6
So
and 1.
basically, what you're saying is you need to watch more Suns games this
Yes,
year.
because I just don't have time. I'm also a college basketball analyst for Fox, and so there's only so much bandwidth I have. There's only so much
Yes.
basketball that these eyes can watch. I have a wife and 2 kids and a puppy, so yeah, it's hard. I've been to 2 Suns games in person. I am taking my wife on Valentine's Day. Don't judge me. On
No, we're all going to
Valentine's
be there
Day,
too.
yeah. So
Yeah.
we're gonna go to a dinner and to the Suns game on February 14th. So I'll see you there.
I love that. Awesome. Well, Casey, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you as always.
Thank you, Lindsay.